Voyagers, welcome to Bon Voyage Bookbox. So my name's Sarah. I'm owner and CEO of Bon Voyage Bookbox, your reading destination inside a box. So today we've got a very special unboxing of our France Voyage. So if you're a current subscriber and you have your pink box, go ahead and grab it and we can unbox it together. If not, then enjoy this journey into France. So if we're looking at our book box here, and if we unpack our piece, the very first thing inside your very first box, no matter when you are beginning your journey with us, you'll receive your reading passport. So if you grab our reading passport, this is the start of your journey. So if we're thinking about what makes traveling so special, of course, we're going to be exploring different cultures, foods, ideas, literature. And one of my favorite things when I am entering into a new country, something to collect and remember my travels with, is to actually add a stamp to my reading passport or to my passport. So I wanted to replicate that experience for our voyagers. So not only are you going to be traveling through a good book, some recipes, and learning more about the history and the culture, but thinking about actually kind of replicating that experience and that excitement of I actually added a stamp to my passport. So this is the actual dimensions of a real passport. You have your little profile on the first page that you can fill out. And then inside each of our boxes, every destination comes with a unique passport stamp that you'll add to your reading passport. So if you look on our first page, there is a spot that fits perfectly in with your passport stamp. And then this also doubles as your reading journal. So once you've read the book, or as you're reading, you can take notes, give yourself a little review. So out of 4 stars, what would you rate it? And this is where you could either write maybe a plot summary or favorite characters or quotes. And this then becomes your reading journal. So throughout the year, you'll have 6 different boxes because our subscription is every other month. And so you'll be able to then look back and collect your different voyages and travels. And at the end of the year, you can then take a look at which destination do you actually want to visit. What were some of your favorite characters, quotes? How many pages did you end up reading? So it's a great way to track your travels as you read. Some people like to use this as a bookmark as you're reading. I like to keep it on my bookshelf. I think it's just kind of fun to have it sitting on my shelf and I can always thumb through it later on. But let's dive into our France voyage. So inside our book box, we have our tissue paper. This one is French themed. So we've got a French toile. So this gorgeous blue and white of the French countryside. And if you look, every single box is going to be enclosed with a little stamp. So these are actually made with wax seals by my stepdad. So this one has an Eiffel Tower on it. And again, they are handmade. I put a little sticker on the back. So you can actually collect these too. I know I have one voyager who actually puts magnets on the back and then displays them on her fridge. So that could be something that you could do too. And then once you actually open up the tissue paper, you can then see all of your different travel souvenirs and elements. So we'll just work from top to bottom. Our very first piece is our passport stamp. So we've got a little golden notebook or notepad, and then inside we have our passport sticker. So this is actually designed by myself. So this is something that's unique to our book boxes. You can't get them anywhere else. And so when I'm designing these, I like to think about what would be something that I'd be looking for in a passport stamp. So I'd be looking back at my passport and thinking, what's that big icon? And so of course we have to have the Eiffel Tower because we're going to France. And then if you've looked at my stories this last week, if you're a follower on Instagram or Facebook, you might have seen some of the other variations. So I actually posted a picture of 20 different versions of this sticker. And my original design was of kind of a starry nightscape, which was beautiful. I really did like it, but it didn't really go with the mood of this particular book because it's more of a romance novel. And so I wanted this to be more of a rosy colored kind of picture. So if you can see, we've got a little bit of a pink background, almost like the golden light era, just when the sun is about to set. And then I also wanted it to look almost like a stamp. So you can see kind of that ink kind of color. And then, of course, we have to have our date. So July 2025, right? Just like when you enter into that country. And then you can't quite see it on the screen, but I actually have a golden halo at the very top of the Eiffel Tower on our sticker. And this is kind of emblematic of, not only is this a huge cultural icon for France, oftentimes the very first thing that someone wants to see when they visit, but if you've been to France, then you know that the Eiffel Tower is actually turned on and glows once the sun sets, and then it actually sparkles, so the lights will actually glimmer on the hour until midnight. So if you have a chance to go to France and go up the Eiffel Tower, my recommendation is to actually book your tickets, because they're timed entry. Book your ticket to the very last entry point, particularly if you're there during the summer. So I booked my ticket entry for 9 p.m., which sounds super late, but around 8 o'clock is when the sun starts to set. So take your picnic blanket or maybe a towel, grab a baguette, some cheese, some chocolates, and have a lovely picnic on the Champ de Mars. So that area right in front of the Eiffel Tower. You won't be the only one, I promise. Lots of locals and tourists are there too. And then once you pack up your dinner, go ahead and head to the ticket office. You'll show them your timed entry ticket. And then as you're climbing up the Eiffel Tower, if you're a little bit tired, you can take the lift if you want to take the elevator. But as you're climbing the Eiffel Tower, not only do you get this beautiful cityscape as you're starting to climb, but the sun is starting to set. And so you get to see kind of this golden glow throughout the cityscape, kind of like our sticker here. So again, kind of that sun setting. And by the time you get to the top, it is now nighttime. And the whole city lights up. It's just stunning. And then at that point, most of the people have already come and visited. So I've gone up the Eiffel Tower a couple of times. My first time I went right at the middle of the day, so right at noon. And it was so crowded. I had to actually push and wait to actually get a viewpoint, let alone looking at some of the other sides of the Eiffel Tower. So if you go in the evening, it was pretty deserted. So I had it pretty much to myself. There were only a couple other couples and families that were there. And you get a great view. It's nice and peaceful. And then if you wait a little bit longer, right at 9 o'clock, it will then start to sparkle. So you can actually be a part of the sparkling element of the Eiffel Tower, which is just such a wonderful memory. So if you go again in the evening, you can then see it from brightly lit up to more of that sunset kind of romantic vibe, and then that nightscape. So that would be my recommendation. Now, I know a lot of my Voyagers have been to France. So if you have, go ahead and drop in the chat for me. What was one of your favorite either destinations or experiences while you were in France? So drop that in the chat, and this will be the perfect opportunity for if someone is planning to go to France anytime soon, you can then take a look and see other suggestions by other Voyagers. Okay. All right, so as you're dropping those in, if we are going to France, we of course have to have a boarding pass. So this is our bookmark for our book box, and I designed this myself. So I wanted it to be red and white and blue for their French flag. And of course, we have to have Bon Voyage Airlines at the top as well. If you wanted, you could even put your name on the boarding pass. And then on the back side, I have our cultural icons. So Notre Dame, the Arc de Triomphe, a baguette, of course, and the Eiffel Tower. So, and this is the actual size of a real boarding pass. And then I wanted to include this really sweet quote. I won't try to read the French to you, but the English translation is, "To remain is to exist, but to travel is to live." A great reminder that it's important for us to, of course, visit other cultures and places and destinations to really get an appreciation for this great wide world that we live in, and all of its rich opportunities for us to connect with other human beings and those before us and those that will come after us. But also, we can look at this to remain in our comfort zone, to only maybe do the same thing over and over again, or to read the same types of books, or to not try new foods or learn more about different types of history and things like that. We simply are existing. It can be fun, it can be enjoyable, but we're not going to grow as humans if we don't step outside our comfort zone and try something different that maybe we didn't initially consider. And that's part of the goal of Bon Voyage Book Box, is to deliver a new destination to your door that maybe you didn't initially consider, or maybe trying a piece of literature that wouldn't normally be on your TBR or to be read list, and this is that new opportunity. So this is then your boarding pass. So now that we've actually boarded our voyage, we have stamped our passport. Now let's go to the very first place that most people want to go to in France, which is the Eiffel Tower. So this is actually your piece of Paris, your souvenir that you get to take home in your box. So this is actually designed by my stepdad. He's very talented. So he actually designed the scroll work on this piece. And if you look at our different layers, they actually have little hearts on the inside too, which is just so adorable. So he actually designed it, cut it out of wood, and then painted it our iconic Paris pink. And then I cut a little ribbon that you can then put at the top. So when you put this together, it's going to look like this. All right, isn't this so adorable? When he showed me the design, I just thought we just have to have this. And I was so worried about it getting broken during shipping. So then he thought, okay, let's make it so we can actually break it down. So again, it arrives in your box flat, but then you can actually put it together. And I put a little QR tutorial to you on how to put it together, but it just slides in. And so it's great because if maybe you have it on display and then it starts to change seasons, we're about to go into the fall. So maybe you want to put up your Halloween decor, Thanksgiving, and different pieces. You can easily just break it down, pack it up, and tie it together. And then when you're ready to put it out again, right, just put it in. But if you do want this to be up permanently, because it is so adorable, maybe you want to put a little dollop of glue underneath each of the different circular layers, and then you'll always have your piece of Paris to display. You could also change out the ribbon too, but this actually goes with our wrapping paper for our book surprise. So I'll show you guys that in a minute as well. And then I was so excited when I discovered I had some friends over and I was going to have a Paris-themed coffee and croissant party. And so I put this on display, and then I had a couple macarons, and I thought, I think these might actually fit. And so I discovered that a standard macaron, it's about 2 or 3 inches in diameter, fits perfectly on the bottom base. So there are 4 little kind of pizza slices, if you look on the last piece, and so you can just slide in a macaron. So you could put this next to your coffee and then just kind of munch as you're reading, and it's just the perfect little display. So if you have your Eiffel Tower, I'd love to know, where are you planning to display it? As of right now, I've been just setting it on my bookshelf. I just think it looks so cute next to my French books. But if you have another place that you found that you've enjoyed just kind of looking at it, let me know, because I'd love to get some ideas on other places to try. Okay, so boarded our plane. We've headed off to the Eiffel Tower. Now, when we're thinking about France, we cannot talk about France without thinking about the food. And so inside each of our book boxes, in order to have a full cultural experience, we want to make sure that you are immersing yourself in all aspects. And food is a great storyteller. Thinking about the history of different generations and passing down homemade recipes and what makes it, again, kind of iconic for this region. And France is known for many things, but in particular, their pastries and their macarons. So this is the actual macaron recipe inside your box that I learned and used when I took a macaron patisserie class when I was in Paris. So this is the actual authentic version of the macarons. And a couple things that I would recommend. One is, if you are trying this for the first time, you might have heard that macarons are difficult to make. And yes, that's true. It just takes a little bit of practice on certain skills that are pretty unique to macarons. So what I would recommend is make sure that you've got a really strong pastry piping bag, and then make sure that you look at maybe like a YouTube video on how to do a macaronage. So what that means is what you're doing with the macaron shell batter. Once you've mixed all the ingredients, what you have to do to make sure that it gets the nice, beautiful sheen of a macaron shell and that crisp, crunchy outside and that fluffy inside. In order to accomplish this, you have to actually press the air out of the batter, which I had never done before for another kind of pastry. So it really takes some skill and some finesse to make sure it gets silky enough, so that way when you actually put the macaron shells that you pipe into little circles into the oven, that they don't fall and collapse or get kind of holy. They'll still taste delicious, but they won't be as crispy, and they might look a little bit wonky. So to avoid that, you want to make sure you've got a clear macaronage. And then what I would recommend, this recipe makes about 24 macarons, and I would recommend trying different flavors in one batch. So all macarons shells are the same flavor. They're all almond and vanilla because you have almond flour and vanilla extract, and you cannot replace this with a different type of flour. It won't come out with the same kind of texture. So it gets nice and chewy. So what you can do is take your base batter, so follow the directions, and then once you actually have the batter ready to go, separate them into 2 or 3 different bowls, and then you can add different color dyes. And so when you go to a bakery and you're ordering macarons, you'll see all the brightly different colors of the different shells: pink, green, yellow, white, brown, all of those different fun colors. What they do is they represent the buttercream filling. So when you make your 3 different batches, add in the different colors of the buttercream that you're planning to make. And then I gave you guys the buttercream filling recipe for strawberry because that's one of my favorites. But you could very easily replace the strawberry jam with something like lemon curd or blackberry, and you can have those different flavors. So when the shells are baking in the oven, you can then make your pastry cream and then again do the same thing. Put them into 2 or 3 different bowls. They all have the same base. Just add in different jams or essences to get the different flavors. And that way, when you actually have those to serve at maybe a French party or to save for later, you can pop them in the freezer. You then have a nice variety to work with. So these are a lot of fun. And if you are trying our different recipes from our boxes, please take a photo and send them to me. You can direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, or you could share them with me via email. So I'm at contact@bonvoyagebookbox.com. I'm planning to do a little scrapbook style newsletter for upcoming emails. So I'd love to show off your creations. Even if it's maybe a fail, if you've got some holes in your macarons, that's okay too. Again, we're trying. And then for our other recipes, typically I include 2 recipes in our boxes. But I was so excited for France that I decided to do 3, so you get a bonus one. So our other recipes are a tarte tatin, which is an apple tart. These are delicious and really simple to make. You want to make sure you have an oven safe skillet. So I like to use my cast iron skillet, or you could use a Dutch oven. And what you'll do is you're kind of making it upside down. So if you've made a pineapple upside down cake, it's the same kind of concept. So you're going to start off by caramelizing your apples, and then you're going to arrange them so they look all pretty. So it'll look kind of like this picture. So you'll arrange them in circles or in little flowers. And then you're going to roll out your pastry dough and put that on top of your cooked apples. And then you're going to put that whole thing in the oven. It'll then crisp up and bubble and be all ooey gooey. And then you'll pull it out. And then you're going to take, once it's cooled, a pie plate to put on top of your skillet. And then you'll literally flip it over. And then you'll have the gorgeous rows of apples exposed. And then your golden crust that's kind of supporting them and pillowing them. So it is delicious. I would highly recommend making some creme anglaise to maybe put on top, or some caramel, or putting a side of French vanilla ice cream. It's delicious and simple, definitely impresses your friends and family. And then our last one, this is great if you're going to a last minute party and you need to bring an appetizer. Really simple to put together. You don't need to bake anything. It's just on the stove. It cools very quickly. This is your fig tapenade. Delicious, sweet, and also a little bit salty and tart. And this is great with some crackers, or you can cut up a baguette, toast in the oven for a few minutes, sprinkle some sea salt and drizzle some olive oil, and then you can just scoop on your fig tapenade. And that's delicious. You can put that out as an hors d'oeuvre, or you could have the crackers or the baguette sitting out and let the guests dip up their own. So those are some easy ways to entertain and to spread some joy of French culture. Okay, great way to include friends or children or grandkids to get involved too. And then you can talk about the book that you've been reading and sharing more about maybe your own voyages and experiences around the world. All right, and then to continue our voyage, we then move into our Voyager, which is our travel guide inside our box. So this is something I also design. So I do my own research or include information about my itinerary or things to do and see. So if you're actually planning a trip, or if you want to learn more about the culture that you're reading, this is kind of your inside guide. So inside each of our travel guides, I include a book club guide. So if you have a book club, or if you're wanting to start one, you can start here. I actually come up with questions for you, a little bit more about the book and the author, and then a little bit more information about things to do, history. And for this guide, I really wanted to focus on French literature and its influence on some of the architectural pieces throughout the city. So everyone's seen the beautiful Notre Dame Cathedral, whether in person or the pictures online. But did you know that it actually was supposed to be demolished? But a book, so The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo, actually saved the Notre Dame Cathedral from being demolished. So because Victor Hugo is such an amazing writer, and it's a fabulous novel, if you haven't had a chance to read it, people were up in arms when they discovered that they were planning to tear that down and build something new in its place. So it is now a protected icon because of that. And then if you are going to visit Notre Dame, you have to just step 300 feet just across the street to Shakespeare and Company, which is my favorite bookstore in the entire world. And it is on the top of most literary enthusiasts' bookstores to visit around the world, because it has such a rich history, and it is just such a dreamy experience as you're walking in. So it's a very small little building, and each little section is divided by genre. And if you go upstairs, there's a piano and a little alcove where you can sit and read and look out the window, and you can actually see the Notre Dame Cathedral right from the attic window. So it really is quite romantic. I would recommend visiting before they actually open. There's usually a queue for about 30 minutes. So do go around 7:30. Maybe bring your breakfast with you. You can munch on a croissant, have your coffee, maybe have some gelato ice cream if it's a little bit early. And then when you go into the bookstore, they limit the number of guests that can go in, so that way it's a more pleasant experience. This is one of the only English-speaking bookstores, or English bookstores as far as English literature, in Paris. And so this actually started with Sylvia Beach. She was the original owner, and she started this off as a lending library. And so the goal was to allow people to have access to English translated or English literature books while in France, because there were a lot of English-speaking expats. And so she wanted to spread the joy of reading. And so you would actually, it was kind of like a subscription. You'd pay a monthly fee, and you could check out as many books as you wanted. And it actually then became a publishing house because James Joyce was trying to publish his book Ulysses, which is one of the most banned books in the world. And he wasn't having any luck finding a publisher. And so Sylvia Beach actually said, you know what, I'm going to publish it. So she added a publishing house on top of her bookstore. And then there's even more. She's a fabulous lady. She actually saved her books in her bookstore from the Nazis. Crazy. And so I would highly recommend reading more about her story. This is actually a Shakespeare and Company edition that you can order online or purchase if you have a chance to go there. And what you definitely want to make sure that you do, bucket list item, when you go to check out, because you'll probably have several books you'll want to bring with you, ask them. They usually will prompt you at the cashier, but they'll ask you if you want to have your book stamped. Now, I'm normally one of those people who does not like to write in books. I don't annotate in them. I usually use sticky notes, that type of thing. This is my one exception, because they have a special stamp, kind of like our passport sticker, that is unique to them. They're the only one in the world that does this, that has 0.0, which is the center point of Paris. So all points go back here. And it's the physical location is directly outside the Notre Dame Cathedral. You can actually stand there, get your photo op. But how special would it be to have your book then stamped with 0.0 as well, because that's where you purchased it. So that's a fun souvenir to take home with you as well. And then a little bit more about things to do beyond, of course, the museums. Definitely want to go to Orsay, the Louvre, the Rodin, going up the Eiffel Tower. Go to see opera in the Garnier Opera House. That's where the Phantom of the Opera supposedly still resides. There's a special box that is only for the Phantom. I got to see a ballet there, and it was magical. I've always wanted to visit the Louvre at night. I have not had a chance to do that yet, but that is on my bucket list. And of course, taking a patisserie class and things like that. Additional foods to try, of course, a macaron. And then I highly recommend trying a praline. which is at La Pralue in Paris. They have several locations. I actually wanted to learn how to make these and put them as a recipe in our box, but sadly, those little rosettes, they're sugared almonds, are only available in Europe. And I looked at our European grocery store and they didn't have them. I was so sad. But if you have a chance to go, essentially, it's kind of like a brioche bun with sugared almonds. And so it's about the size, they're quite large. They're about the size of 2 Cinnabons put together. And so you could easily cut this up and have it be breakfast for your whole family. I ate it in one sitting when I was waiting outside Versailles for 3 hours. And I ended up sharing it with a lot of people that were actually in line with me as we were waiting. So I made a lot of friends that way too. But what's really special about these buns is that they actually gift wrap them. So when you go into the store, you'll purchase it, and then they actually wrap it in this beautiful gold foil, and then they put a little ribbon on it, and then they even give you a fancy bag like at a department store with those ribbon handles, and you can waltz out of there thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got the best thing ever. They also sell chocolates and gelato, so definitely a must stop for any foodies. And then I also include a sample itinerary, recommendations of other things to do. And of course, if you have a chance to go beyond Paris, do so, or better yet, come back again. There's always good excuses to go to Paris and other parts of France. So things to do in Normandy, the French Riviera, Monaco, technically not part of France, but definitely still want to go there. And then French etiquette and tourist tips. So that is our travel guide, and I include my sources on the back as well. And now that we've had a chance to look at the history, the culture, and things to do on your own itinerary, now is the heart of our box, and that's our big reveal for today, is our book. So this is your surprise in every book box. I'll reveal the different pieces throughout our, on social media throughout the month leading up to the book box being sent out. But I want the book to be the surprise because this is really that gift of travel, and almost like that moment when you step off the plane and you're like, oh my gosh, pinch me, I'm really here, I'm in Paris, and that kind of immersion. And so that's what I want you to experience. So when we unwrap our piece, and actually, we actually have another bonus bookmark my stepdad made of these gorgeous little flowers. So you can use this as a bookmark, or you could even put it in a little bud vase like I have here. So a little bit something extra. And then when you unwrap your book, our French novel, our first translated novel for Bon Voyage book box. So very authentic, beloved bestseller in Paris, and first time available in America, is The Red Notebook by Antoine Laurent. So I loved this book. It's almost like a scavenger hunt mystery / a little bit of crime and romance going through Paris. And so the first time I visited Paris, I felt like I was running breakneck speed, trying to get off all the different to-dos on my must-do list. Go to the Louvre, go to the Orsay, try all these different foods, everything. And I didn't have a chance to actually just stop and breathe and look around and just kind of soak in, I'm in Paris, and what that means and what that kind of feels like. And so I love how the Red Notebook takes you kind of physically around as they're searching for someone to these different iconic places, but also kind of those slow moments of what it's like to just be in this kind of Paris environment. So we have our Red Notebook, and because it is called the Red Notebook, I had, of course, to include a red notebook in your box. That was our little bonus gift for this box. So I'd love to know how you're using your Red Notebook, whether you're using it for maybe planning your future trip or book reviews. So if you've already started to use it or plans for it, go ahead and drop it in the chat. And our Red Notebook is kind of our premise. So I want you to imagine, okay, stepping out of a taxi. It's 2 a.m., so it's quite late. And all of a sudden, you're getting out, right? You've got your purse, of course. And someone snatches your purse and runs off with it. So this poor woman named Laura, this is her experience. And she's standing outside her apartment, no keys, no wallet, no phone, and trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Right? So she goes across the street and checks into a hotel, explains the situation. The concierge is very kind and says, yes, don't worry about it. You'll pay in the morning. she falls asleep. So that's our first chapter. So already we've got this crime, we've got this concern for this poor woman. And then chapter 2, we switch to a new perspective, and we have our bookseller, Laurent. So he is opening up his shop in the morning the following day, and he looks outside and he sees this purse just sitting on top of a trash can, which he's then thinking to himself, and I think this is so funny, wow, I don't think I've ever seen someone throw out a purse, right? Typically, they either repurpose it or they might donate it, but it seems strange that it's just sitting there. So he goes to investigate. And if we think about kind of a purse itself, oftentimes, at least I've had this experience, I might wait a week, maybe even a month before I start to clean out my purse. I might be surprised with some things that I find, right? Might be typical things like pens or bookmarks, receipts, but sometimes I might find something a little bit strange, right? And so he's trying to kind of look through and see, where can I identify who this purse belongs to? And he realizes very quickly, well, someone must have snatched it, took what they thought was worthwhile, and then left everything else. But there's also a lot of other items inside the purse. So he says, well, I need to find who owns this purse and return it to them, because clearly they want it back, right? And if you've ever left your home without your purse or your wallet, or you forgot your backpack at home and you're headed to school, we have that moment of panic because we've lost kind of an extension of ourselves, right? Our bag of tricks, per se, our emergency bag. And so he wants to make sure that that is taken care of. So he's a good citizen. He goes to the police station and says, hey, I found this purse. Can I, turn this into lost and found? And they say, oh yeah, sure. We have to fill out some paperwork, but we're kind of busy right now because we're the police station and we've got crimes going on. So come back in a few hours. Like, okay. So he goes back to work, opens up the bookstore, sells some books. And at the end of the day, police station is closed for civilians. And so he's looking at the purse, just kind of sitting on his coffee table, and gets curious. And as he starts to pull out different items, he finds a red notebook. And so inside the notebook, we have a journal. And so this woman, so Laura, now that we've met her in that first chapter, is sharing whatever comes to mind. So she talks about a dream that she has. She makes a list of all the things she loves and things that she hates. She talks about her favorite books, and he's just kind of enchanted by the innermost thoughts of this person, who again has no identity. He's never met her, has no idea if he's run into her maybe on the metro at some point, or maybe she's a customer in his bookstore. No name, doesn't know how old she is, her occupation, nothing. But he's fascinated by what she thinks. And then as he starts to look through other things, he comes across a book. And because he is a bookseller, he is very familiar with books themselves. And he discovers this is actually one of his favorite books. So he then gets to, as he's opening up the piece, he's realizing that there's actually an inscription. And so there is this woman who has had this dedication of this book, one of his favorite book authors, but he knows that this particular author has not done any kind of public signings or book talks ever in the last 10 years. And so now he's extra fascinated. So he wants to make sure that this is returned, because obviously these are valuable. And so this begins our scavenger hunt. So the rest of the book, you're then going through this journey through Paris and figuring out whether or not she gets the purse back and other pieces. So I don't want to leave any other spoilers, but that is kind of the start of your scavenger hunt through Paris. So I hope that you've enjoyed our voyage. And if you have not subscribed to our channel, I just started my YouTube channel. So if you could hit that subscribe button, that would help me out. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. And then for our current Voyagers and brand new Voyagers, we're doing our final reveal of the day, which is our next destination, which I'm super excited. So I was going to give you guys a sneak peek on your souvenir. So kind of like our little Eiffel Tower, another designed by my stepdad. This is our Brazil souvenir. So if you look, this is actually a beautiful wooden mask for our carnival. So carnival is a very popular and very famous festival. And the Brazilian version of carnival is very unique because they have samba dancing, which is a combination of African and Portuguese kind of style of dancing, which is really fun. And I wanted to have this beautiful souvenir that would reflect a little bit more of that unique culture, something that you could display. And it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but it actually has a little bit more of that kind of shimmer in that first layer. And again, one of a kind, you can only get these in our box. And of course, with all of our voyages, we also get that surprise novel, passport sticker, our bookmark, and our recipes. And oh my goodness, this has been so much fun to create. And this is one of my favorite novels that I've read this summer. It's very unique and one of the most famous authors, and for good reason. So I know that you're going to love the book. I read it in one sitting and I felt just completely overwhelmed and excited for more. So I hope that you guys enjoyed our trip to France, excited for our trip to Brazil. And then right after this live, I'm actually going to open up our cart for subscription for our Brazil box. It will be open until we sell out or until September 1st, whichever one comes first. So make sure that you join, and that way we can then begin our next voyage. So thank you so much for joining me to Bon Voyage Bookmark.